Hey guys, so FYI, if my appeal ever drops below 0, just remember I've got a Van Damage beer, Van Damme pun. Right. Okay, right. So, Android and iOS in the ring. So, my background, I've been doing in here for about 3.5 years to 4 years. Been doing Android and iOS. I was around before Android Studio when it was still Eclipse. So hopefully that gives me a bit of, leeway on what I can say. And I am an iOS developer that owns an Android phone. Just saying. So, our first contender, Android. It's been around for quite a while. Its current version is 7, but not as high as iOS. And the active devices are over 1 billion, 1.4 billion. And it's got the most apps in the store compared to our contender in the red corner with 1 billion devices and 2.2 million. So it's been around for longer, but it hasn't quite got the same numbers as Android. So, round 1, market share. What do we think about the Great Britain? Do we think iOS is more, Android's more? Are they equal? Oh good, fairly split. Because it is fairly split. Pretty much 50-50. And that black line, FYI, is BlackBerry, the one that disappears. The actual chart is nice and goes 0.1 and then it just hits 0 and goes, no, I'm not doing any more.
March 2013.
I know. It's called hope. Vain hope. Yeah, Windows Phone is less than 5%. It's not really worth talking about. Yeah, but if you wanted a good reason as to do Android and iOS, you're going to hit like 99% of smartphone users if you know both, right? So, if we're doing points, that's a draw. They're 50-50, right? That's fair. Round 2, language. So, if I try and explain the languages as in cars, right? Bear with me. Java is your first car. Not the greatest, but pretty reliable. You can depend on it. Very versatile. iOS has the choice of 2. Swift is like the new sports car. Everyone wants to see you in it. It's fast. It's really fashionable. But it's lagging this caravan around called Objective-C, right? And no one wants this caravan, really. And it's horrible to work in. It's like 30 years old, right? Swift is good. Swift is going to get us there, right? So the problem is Objective-C loses it for me, so I'm going to give this point to Android. 2-1. Right, round 3. You've taken an interest in iOS or Android, either way. Let's build. This is where Android Studio maybe isn't the best compared to Xcode. Xcode will, by the time I'm explaining it, it's already built. It's already on your sim, right? Maybe not the most accurate of builds, it might break, but it has built. Android, they are working on it, but it is slower. And it will be slower probably for quite some time. But, they are getting there, right? There's hope, but it is a point for iOS. 2-all. Right, debugging. So I'm going to split this up into 2 categories. Don't shake your head at me. Tools and day-to-day, right? Day-to-day use of Xcode is horrendous, right? Android Studio is, till the end, Android Studio is, the process is, Android Studio has told me something's wrong. I will go and fix that. I fixed it, it works. Fantastic. Xcode is, something's wrong. Don't believe you. Build. Clean. Delete derived data. Close Xcode. Restart your computer. Change your sim. And if you've got a CocoaPods, do CocoaPods update and install this somewhere along that line. 95% of the time, that'll help. 5% of the time, it's time to blame yourself, right? So day to day, Xcode doesn't win. But when it comes to the actual tools available, when you actually have a problem and it is your fault, Xcode has all the tools possible to actually get you the answer Not maybe the easiest to use, but they are there, and they are good. So we're now at 3-all. IDE. Now, in case you were wondering, and it wasn't clear in the last one, not the biggest fan of Xcode. And I was there for Eclipse, and Eclipse wasn't the greatest. Eclipse was like Xcode. You could go, oh, I have 3,000 errors. Now I have none, just by building again. But Xcode just day to day just isn't any good at all. Like, and I'll show you get great, like, you get great autocomplete, you get great support. Like there's change logs, you know that they're working on this, might not be quite right yet, but they're working on it. You see the roadmap, it's a great thing. Xcode just doesn't have it, right? It just doesn't have it at all. And there's some great examples of people trying to fix Xcode, whereas before Xcode 8, where they stopped plugins, you had lots of plugins in Xcode, right? One of the most popular ones was this one that fixed the fix button. The fix button, which broke everything you did, right? And the fix button disabled the fix button. The fix plugin disabled the fix button. That was probably the most popular one. But if you need any more sign, that's pretty much as bad as it was. So I'm going to say Android Studio rightfully wins this round. 4-3, Android in the lead. So, sim versus emulator. Probably one of Android's weak points, the emulator, unfortunately. Mainly because it is an emulator. Emulator being hardware and software, right? You give it RAM. You're the one that says, give it 2 gigabytes of RAM. It's going to try and be as close to that device as possible. The sim is like software only. Oh, you've got 16 gigs on your Mac. Fantastic, I'm going to use all that. And it's blindingly fast. You can, and it's got, what's the thing? Case-sensitive file system, which is different to Mac. So just in case you had a bug on iOS, you won't necessarily see it on the sim, because it's Mac, because it's different. Well done. And was there anything else? Oh yes, and because there is an official Android one, and it does work, and there is the Intel Hacksum stuff to make it faster, but judging by the amount of third-party solutions there are, for like most people here, Android people here have probably used Genymotion or Visor or stuff like that, still not as fast as the sim on iOS. Speed isn't everything, but day to day, it kind of is. So iOS wins this round. 4-all. So, shiny, shiny. We're developers, right? We always want to be using the latest stuff. There's no point in using the old stuff all the time. It's boring. The problem is, if we're going to compare Android and iOS against who's on the latest version, Android isn't going to do very well. iOS, 79% of its users are on iOS 10, right? Android, if we take the last 5 versions, 68% of users, right? So immediately, all this shiny, shiny is probably out of reach for now. Yes, you can always build it and say, if build is greater than whatever lollipop, you can do it, but it gets a bit ugly, right? So, unfortunately, iOS wins this round. iOS is now in the lead. Be afraid. Right, submission process. So, prices alone, if you want to develop your own app in Android, $25 one-off. Pretty reasonable, I'm quite happy to pay that. iOS, $99 a year, unless you're enterprise, in which case it's $300 a year. So price, Android wins on that. How about speed to get into the store? We can submit an app in the morning and get it there by lunch for Android. iOS, we've seen it pretty quick, but it's generally days, it's not hours. And we've not yet had an Android app rejected. There are plenty of good stories about iOS apps being rejected. The best one I found on the internet was someone's game, and it was rejected because it wasn't fun. Had to get that in. So basically, Android is cheaper, it's quicker, and easier to submit, right? So it's a draw. Now, if you genuinely, you can do it right now if you want. If you put the words Android and iOS in Google Images, that is the image you'll get, right? There's plenty of lightsaber battles and trying to kill each other and Android eating Apple. We've seen them. That's the top one, right? So it's not all about fights, okay? It's all good. It doesn't have to be a competition. You can do both. But these two are clearly at peace, like these two. That's the CEOs, by the way, if you don't recognize them, who are not smiling, but you know, they're clearly can stand to be in the same room together, right? So it is my dream that Android and iOS developers can also be the same. That's all I've got to say. Any questions?